Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 8 of the Case King Pro Series, where tonight we have got some very exciting stuff because we have, for the first time, are going to be visiting the new track that came to ACC not too long ago during the big 1.9 overhaul, and that is right, we are going to Valencia. And then on top of that, it is obviously the day for new things here in ACC because 1.9.3 spontaneously out of nowhere dropped and even gave us a new car, the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo. And the LFM guys have been busy behind the scenes trying to update everything, get all of that stuff. We've got some patch notes and everything to discuss as well. And I'll also be entirely honest with you. If anything goes wrong during this stream, I do apologise. I've moved to a new room, a new location, the internet. We'll have to see how we go, but fingers crossed all will be okay. My microphone has already thrown itself off the desk. I'm facing completely the wrong direction. I can't see the screen properly. So if you're familiar with these streams, you know I do all this on one monitor, and sometimes it's a little bit of a juggle as is. Tonight might be a little bit of a test of not just the drivers, our very talented field of Pro Series drivers at trying to get themselves around this fairly new circuit with all the cars, the 1.9 physics, but also in the commentary booth to try to keep everything up and running and going. I also do apologise, we are a little bit behind schedule to how we would normally be, and the server is in fact already up and going, but do not worry, we have not missed a single piece of action, and we will be able to see exactly what our drivers are getting up to very, very shortly. But a little bit of a recap then, because of course we didn't have a stream last week, so what has been going on in the world of the Pro Series? Well, last time out at Watkins Glen, it was George Boothby who rose back up to the top, bouncing back from his injury a few races ago. We won't discuss that any further, but managing to get to grips with that Ferrari 296 beautifully after a very long, hard battle with Aidan Walsingham, and he was able to take top spot. But Mr. Consistency once again this season of Nicholas Huben was able to get another podium and continuing to put himself in a strong position to go for this Pro Series Championship victory. And speaking of the championship, we'll have a little bit of a look at the tally in just a second, and with a couple of things like so, I think we can look at that. You can see Nicholas Huben at the top of the standings, ahead of Grantis Crackers, applying a lot of pressure, and then Aidan Walsingham after a second place finish, getting himself up into a top 3, with then the two Yas Heat drivers of Angel Nostroza and Jardier rounding out top 5, Bischoff, Vastner, Drexler, Sami Fock and Timo Karppinen seeing a way to the end of the top 10. You see George Boothby, despite being one of the most successful drivers in the Case King Pro Series, a little bit further down the order, also he hasn't participated in so many races, but we of course do have 2 drop scores for this season, and that will very much likely allow the British driver to hopefully climb up a little bit up the leaderboard later on in this championship. So we will get into the server in just a moment. I've just got a couple more things to set up on the fly as we go. Oh dear. Oh. Okay, well, everybody watching, the evening of fun and chaos continues because my security software has just blocked the broadcasting tool. So I'm going to continue to be trying to do some shenanigans in the background to try to stop it from kicking up a fuss later on in the stream. So we do have a few minutes left of practice to go, so we should hopefully have just about enough time to sort things out before we head into qualifying. But I may be a little bit preoccupied with a couple of things in a moment. I'm just going to try to see what it's doing, because it doesn't seem to have really done a whole lot other than cause me a great deal of bother. And no, it's not particularly happy about it. Okay, so, well, this is going fantastically well, isn't it? Oh, we are seemingly getting some sort of form of broadcast in the overlay. You'll get a dynamic bit of commentary, unusual perspective for the for these streams to see what we have going on inside the commentary booth when all the chaos ends up descending. Whilst trying to tackle some of that, I will also actually run through a little bit of the patch notes that we have had for 1.9.3, because that was a surprise update for today, and a very welcome one at that, because I know that there was a few complaints about the BOP over recent events, and unfortunately it has, on occasion has meant that we've ended up with some situations where there has been a dominant car. Now, of course, that is something we're not exactly strangers to when it comes to ACC. It does happen. Each car, it has its strengths, it has its weaknesses, and often that does end up playing into effect in the grand scheme of things. But with this latest update, we have a revised BOP. For those that are a big fan of the Bentley, we do sometimes have a couple of those in the chat that do show their support for the British outfit. I think sadly no longer participating in the GT3 Championship. That car has had apparently some performance improvements. Now, those improvements, you asked, I don't entirely know what those are. I only saw that we had this update approximately 15 minutes before the stream started, and was hoping that the internet would actually manage to process the update in time for our race this evening. But that car, alongside with the Honda, have had some improvements. We've also had some physics changes for the Audi Evo 2, so it'll be interesting to see how that one ends up playing into effect as well. And then we've also got the likes of some changes in terms of general tyre modelling. Also got a couple of tweaks on aspects of the Ferrari, the new Ferrari and the new Lamborghini as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays into effect. And of course, we do have the new McLaren. Now, I'm not 100% certain, in actual fact, if we have any McLarens in this field, and also whether or not they would have been able to select that car going into tonight's race, because it has all round, not just for yours truly, but all round for ACC, has been quite a last minute series of things ahead of this one. And we had an overlay for about a minute there, and then as soon as I've gone to use the camera, that unfortunately the security software that I won't name has decided to block it. So how can I get around that? I do apologise, everybody. It's obviously going to be one of those evenings, so what can I do in terms of trying to fix this then? Let's try that and see if that helps whatsoever. I do appreciate that the security software does think it's done a wonderful job of stopping any suspicious activity happening on the PC. However, I can very confidently say all it's doing is causing a great deal of despair at this end of the commentary booth. So we'll give it one last try. If that doesn't work, then I shall try to go down the route of the main ACC broadcast tool and try to refamiliarise myself with that one. So apologise everybody for the slight shenanigans at the beginning of this stream. Hopefully the show will be on the road in due course. Drivers are just about to make their way into qualifying, so whilst I'm sorting these bits and pieces out, I will also try to give you, as best as I can, a little bit of a rundown of what is going on in the server, so we can keep an eye on the action with all of that. Meanwhile, if those that are in the chat that do want to give a little bit of company to the broadcasting side of things, who is excited about the 1.9.3 update? Like I say, I know there's been some previous drivers and supporters in the chat that wanted to see the likes of the Bentley rise to the top once again, and it's taken a little bit of time for it to come around. And whilst I'm not entirely convinced that the Bentley will be a car that all of a sudden jumps to the tippy top of the standings, it may at least be able to find its purpose at a few circuits. It used to be very quick at the likes of Hungaroring, Zandvoort, some Zolder as well, another track where that was very, very quick. Its advantage has somewhat been lost during the 1.9 update, because one of the things it was very good at was being able to negotiate curbs, and Of course, 1.9, we saw big improvements in terms of cars negotiating curves overall, so not so much an aspect that the Bentley is quite as good at anymore. So, it does look like everything has fantastically exploded at this end of the commentary booth. So, desperate times calls for desperate measures. So, let's see if we can try to fix this and see what I can do to try to get ourselves into a little bit of a better situation with some of these. Of course, brilliantly, the broadcasting tool, I think, will it still work for me? I really hope it does. I don't like the sense of that delay, and I have a horrible feeling that this is going to continue to cause me a world of pain. Okay. So, this really is an exciting one for the evening, isn't it? Let's try to see what I can do about this then. I do apologise, everybody. I am very sorry about some of the technical issues. I will try to get things up and running as quickly as I can. This was really not a scenario that I envisaged for tonight's race. I thought all of these shenanigans of trying to get everything set up were sorted and done with, but fortunately things haven't quite played into that effect. If things start to get into a particular dire state, then I will try to, if nothing else, navigate things by some of the keyboard controls, but that will unfortunately mean that we won't have anywhere near as much in the way of information in terms of graphics and overlays, and also I'm afraid the camera shots will be a little bit on the janky side. But one way or another, tonight's footage will be broadcast in some form for us all to enjoy. So I've tried to do a little bit of an update on the broadcasting tool, and we'll see if that makes any sort of difference in terms of trying to get this to behave and see what we can do. Just to also keep those of you informed, currently it is Jade Hutchinson that has set the fastest lap in qualifying. Still 11 minutes to go in the qualifying session that we have running around in the background as I try to figure out how to get all of this back together. Let's see. Is things going to be more favourable this time around? We can only hope and wait to find out. And that looks a little bit more promising. Okay, so... okay, I think that we may actually, by some miracle, it's not ideal, but I think by some miracle, we may be in business. Now, like I say, I have not used this software in a while, so it's going to take me a little bit of time to sort things out, but, and of course out because that doesn't run in the way that I would usually have it, like that is missing from the graphic. I will at least, though, for what footage I do have to present you with, I will at least put that across so that you can at least have a little bit of a look at what is going on in the meantime on screen, so you're not left completely in the dark with all of that as I try to find the missing pieces of the puzzle as on your screen right now. That is Jade Hutchinson, who has since dropped down to 4th place. I should try to get the information up on the leaderboard in just a second and see if we can finally get everything in place before we actually get going into this race. So I'm trying to work out how I don't have some of this information and how I can try to desperately get some of those components back, and I'm not entirely convinced that I'm going to be able to, which is a right pain. Thank you for the support in the chat. I can't quite explain the level of difficulty and chaos, if it wasn't already apparent, that is going on here. In the meantime, someone who's having a much more enjoyable evening is Kazuki Omishima, a Japanese driver who we have not had in the Pro Series before, but has been racing at this circuit almost non-stop since it featured in ACC, often in the 296, has decided to go for the Lamborghini instead. But he is extremely quick. In actual fact, I've also just seen by his team name, seems to have joined Burst Esport, and that does not surprise me, as Kazuki has proven himself time and time again to be a very, very fast driver indeed. So, in the meantime, whilst I'm trying to sort all of this out, it's not the solution I was planning on going with, but it's, I think, going to be the only one I can actually do for this evening, and something is better than nothing, and that is to use this overlay instead, because that one is working and hasn't been violently blocked by my security software. So it's all a little bit different for this evening, but in some form or another, we do have action on screen, we have graphics, and we are going to be able to enjoy the action of the Pro Series. And I will do my damnedest to try to bring all of this action as best as I can, because if you haven't already managed to gather, things are in a little bit of a state of meltdown, but I shall do my best, as Kazuki has made a little bit of a mistake there in the middle of the lap, decides to abandon that one, and as we finally settle into the Pro Series action, we'll get underway and try to see what this is all going to pan out like. So, Omishima currently on provisional pole ahead of Teemu Karppinen in the number 5 Grip Hacks Engineering Lamborghini, and then who has actually just been jumped by the Canadian of Jade Hutchinson in the number 6 car. So it's Lamborghinis 1, 2, 3. Nicholas Huben once again in that Unicorns of Love Mercedes in very fine form, and only a 10.5 away from pole position as it currently stands. That Mercedes has been incredibly consistent as time has gone on. Aidan Walsingham continuing his fine form and being best of the Ferrari. To see that curb on the exit, as I have to familiarise myself now with some of these corners, that's the exit of turn 12. It does cause cars a little bit of a problem from time to time. It can be tricky for them to negotiate that part, and whilst, you know, for the most part we haven't had the same level of sensitivity, particularly those drivers in the Ferraris, for example, we haven't had the same level of sensitivity in those cars when it has come down to curves that we once saw in the likes of 1.8 of this game, but it is something that can just upset a little bit of the balance and the dynamics of these cars when they do clip that curve on the exit of turn 12. Let's see, though, whereabouts, who have we got on circuit? We will go for an onboard. There we go. Kazuki actually looks like he is about to start a lap very shortly. And well, if I can navigate my way to the onboard camera, we will try to go for a bit of a first-person view of what it is like to negotiate this Valencia circuit. So there we go. Miracle has it that we have actually made our way to the onboard cameras. So 14 turns of high-speed action around this incredible circuit. Make your way down towards turn 1. It's a very fast corner. Try to spot your braking point on the entry. You can use the AstroTurf on the exit as the track limits extends a little bit further out than conventionally would. Trying to use all of the track a little bit more to widen turn 2. That is doing curve. And then on the power as early as he can be. Through a kink of turn 3. Easy flat in qualifying trim over to the left-hand side of the circuit. Back towards the apex on the right-hand side. Drift down wide onto the Astro again towards turn 5 we go, carrying the momentum through on the exit, and then down towards turn 6 and see Kazuki absolutely using every millimeter possible of this track, and very smooth steering inputs for the most part as well. Really seems to be dialed in with this car, pushing now through the flat out section of turn 7, hard on the brakes of turn 8, longer than you think, and then trying to get on the power through turn 9, again easy flat, but now double right-hander coming up in a tricky one to spot your braking through as Correca splits that pack of Ferraris, goes up into P6, still a little bit further down though on where he'd want to be on his championship rival. Now a tricky turn of 12, through that apex, use up a little bit of a curb on the exit. There's that little bump that I've been talking about. Security software's given me an offer. I do not care, because down towards turn 13, heavy on the brakes, towards turn 14, clipping the inside apex, hard on power once more, and towards the start-finish line to round out the lap. And I don't think it'll be an improvement for Kazuki this time around, but bearing in mind these tyres do take a little bit longer than they used to in terms of getting up to temperature. So maybe for the number 25 car, the next lap around will be his next bid for an improvement on his position. Nicholas Huben, though, out of nowhere, 30.102 by 300ths of a second, gets himself into provisional pole. Mighty lap from the German driver. We'll see what he is able to do in the latter portion of his session. Only 3 and a bit minutes to go. And meanwhile, a few more Porsches making their way around as Walsingham goes up to the top 3. Great lap from the British driver in that Visceral Esports car. Norida and K. Kramer Racing Esports teammate is out of the kick of oversteer, and he's going to abandon that one, get back out on circuit very quickly. He'll need to if he wants to set some more laps. Marco Bischoff, of course, a 2-time Pro Series champion. He's got a couple more laps to go that he can look to try to execute, as he is in hot pursuit from another one of the Mercedes behind. I think that is Steckenberger down in 23rd position, as one of the Audis, I think, just jumped up the order. We don't see the Audis all too often, but right now we have Valentin Goppelt in the number 21 car that is sitting inside of the top 20, so good stuff from him. We'll have to see if those physics changes to the Audi are making life any easier for the number 21 driver. But what a fantastic lap from Nicholas Huben. Get himself on provisional pole and has not taken a win so far this season. Could this be the evening where that Unicorns of Love Mercedes finally makes its way to a top step? It's been consistently on the podium many a time, but has been waiting for an opportunity to see the top trophy. And also remember that every race winner that we have this season walks away with a nice little prize, either provided by I do believe Ducky Keyboards or Glorious Gaming. And double check that one to make sure. And yes, I was right. An €100 coupon. And for tonight, it will be Glorious Gaming that provide that, as we are on a even round for this evening. Rounding out his lap, Marco Bischoff, he did lose a bit of time in the latter portion of that one, so it won't be an improvement on this lap in particular. We do have some other improvements though. Timo Carpenter's found a 10th on his lap. Jade Hutchinson, I think, is a little bit further along, the Canadian driver in that number 6 Lamborghini. That was a chunk of curb and a half then. Kazuki Omishima as well was dancing around, improving on his lap. Jade Hutchinson gained a lot in that final corner. 2/10 is the improvement. We could see a 29. He's got a great toe from the Porsche in front. It's not going to be quite good enough for a 29, I don't think, but it is. Oh, it is! A 29.997. Took a little bit of time to update. What a phenomenal effort from the number 6 car, the first man into a 29s. And Omishima, he did improve as well to go ahead of Nicholas Huben, but was not able to rival the pace of that number 6 car. A couple more laps from these drivers to go in the closing stages of his qualifying session. Aidan Walsingham now gets that Ferrari up into the top 3. Tremendous stuff from the Visceral Esports driver. That is excellent pace. Won't be any further improvements from him, but next batch of Ferraris all the way down from 9th place with Mattia De Campo. Another great showing from here ahead of last week's race winner, George Boothby, and we have the likes of Leon Burton. Leon Burton actually has just jumped up into P9. We've got Valentin Barrier that is on an improvement at the moment. A few drivers abandoning their laps and heading to the pits. In fact, a lot of those around the tail end of the top 10 and inside the top 15. As again, big chunk of curb. Oh, and a wheel into the gravel for the Frenchman, keeping his foot in it and hoping that it sticks. We saw Hutchinson make up a huge amount of time, and Kazuki will not improve on his final lap, and I don't think anyone is going to be able to contend with the 29. See what Valencia can do up into P11 for the Frenchman at the end of that one. Good stuff from him. And I think, by the looks of it, that is the rest of our improving laps, unless Nicholas Huben, he is on one. Whether or not he can do something tremendously special in the closing moments, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, amazing driver, and he doesn't quite beat his previous best. We do have, I think, the last car on circuit, who is actually dancing around a potential improvement. That is Pogorelov in the number 23 car. Let's see what 296 can do. And in the end, no further improvement and stays P13. So that was quite the qualifying session with all of that, wasn't it? Both on the technical side of things and with that very tight series of margins in the closing stages of that. What a fantastic lap from Jade Hutchinson to get into a 29s only by 0.003 of a second, but sometimes 0.003 is all you need and all it takes in order to be the top of such a tightly packed field. So incredible stuff from him. We should, all things being well, I know it's all been a little bit of a debacle on the technical side of things, but I think we should be okay to at least have the normal overlay for the starting grid. Unfortunately, we won't have the custom camera that we have thoroughly enjoyed during most of this season, but there we go. So Jade Hutchinson starts on pole position ahead of newcomer to the series, Kazuki Omishima. Great stuff from him, and it's Lamborghini's locking out the front row, but amazing stuff from Aidan Walsingham in the Ferrari 296 to get that car into the top three. Phenomenal stuff from him, and really carrying that momentum from last round. Nicholas Huben, Mr. Consistency, starts in P4, but Grantas Correcas, great late effort from the Veloce esports driver, and puts the number 1 car into the number 5 spot, and the number 5 car puts in the number 6 spot, and Timo Karppinen in the next of the Lamborghini starts in P6 with Marco Bischoff, the number 2 car in the server, managed to get ahead of his K. Kramer Racing Esports teammate in the end by just one position, with Noah Ida starting in P8. Leon Burnt in the number 15 Ferrari, the next of the Italian prancing horses, and Mattia De Campo rounding out the top 10. Great stuff from some of these drivers, really beating out some of the big names in these 296s. Valentin Barrier, Yasheet Esports driver in the Lamborghini, and then George Boothby, surprised to see him down in P12, so not the qualifying section we would have expected from last week's winner. Then Alexander Pogorelov in the number 23 car starts in 13th place. Dennis Schops in the number 30 Lamborghini, the German driver, starts in P14, ahead of Amir Sabarov in the number 28. Good stuff from him to start in P15. Remember, the numbers of these cars reflects their relative elo in the server, so if you see a number much higher than their finishing position, their starting position, then that is a great qualifying session for them. Steckenberger in the 24 starts P16 with Samir Faulkner next of the Yasheet Ferraris in P17. Valentin Goppelt in the number 21 car starts in P18 with Daniel Valler in the number 8 car starts in P19. Rounding out the top 20, Alessio Mellis, the next of the Ferraris, in the number 22 car, and then Malek Mamad in the 33 Porsche, the Frenchman, managing to a good job there, getting himself into 21st place. Thomas Morant, who I think there may have been a little bit of support for earlier on in the chat, starts in 22nd place with Adrian Stroza, the Chilean, starting in 23rd position with Tony Mahoney. What a fantastic name that is. Starting in 24th place for the number 36 Lamborghini. And then Michael Frey, the Swiss driver, the number 26 Porsche, starting in 25th place. Manuel Fuchs, man who's had quite a busy time in previous races. Number 18 car starts down in 26th position with Jacob Shaber starting in 27th place. And then we have Matteo Naldi in the number 19 car, starting in 28th position, with Dominic Cyprus in the number 31 Ferrari in 29th place. Quite a big grid for this evening, which is what we love to see as drivers start to get underway for the formation lap. Christian Nasmien in the number 34 starts in the end of the top 30. Fabio Steyer, next of the German drivers, number 17 car, starts 31st. Benny Witter for Yeet Esports in the Mercedes. Unconventional car for them to take, quite often sporting the BMWs, to see what he can do. Gorka Baron in the next of the Porsches starts in 33rd position. Jan Drexler, the German driver, starts in 34th. As then Nico Pennanen starts in 35th position and sporting a livery, from what I can see. We'll have to get a bit of a close-up of that later on. The Finnish driver in 35th, with Jonathan Clifford, the American, in the Lamborghini, and a car that I'm sure he is glad to have stuck to over recent months, with obviously the new edition really having some fantastic place. Jörg Domen starts in the 37th place. Gregor Force in the 39th starts in 38th. And the flip side of that, the 38 of Stefan Hildebrandt starts in 39th position and rounds out our grid. So, with all of that said, we shall look to get this show on the road for 60 minutes of racing tonight. And big thank you to Jonathan there in the chat. It is good to be back. If you missed the beginning of the stream, there was quite a bit of shenanigans, unfortunately, on the technical side of things, and a little bit of a compromised layout that we have on the broadcast tonight, but we do have cameras, we have action, and we have some of the best drivers on the LFM platform that are about to get underway for some incredible action, I am sure. Jade Hutchinson, a driver that we have talked about time and time again over the last couple of seasons, has executed fantastic pace and put on some tremendous performances. It's been a bit of a rarity to see him start on pole. I don't think that this is his first pole position. He certainly hasn't had many. I'm not entirely 100% certain on that statistic on either count, but certainly it is good to see him at the front end of the field. Alongside him, Kazuki Omashima. Fantastic debut for him at circuits he is very familiar with. And of course, with all of the aspects of tyre management that 1.9 has brought us, we could see a very interesting battle playing out in this race. So for 60 minutes of action then here at the Valencia circuit for 1.9.3, we are go then. And Jade Hutchinson, very even starts with Omashima on the front row. Nicholas Hubert already overtaken Walsingham on the run up towards turn 1 then. And who's it going to be? It is side by side actually between Omashima and Nicholas Hubert, who's gone very, very wide. We'll rejoin the circuit in just a moment. We'll have to go to the helicam, I think. See, there's all over 3 wide Walsingham, Carreras, and there's got down to the championship leaders. And Hubert almost around Timu Carpenter, just about manages to stop him from spinning entirely. I think Bischoff or Noah Reeder, one of them ends up being collected, involved a little bit in that one, but there's going to be some words said. I'm sure that's a big dive in the background. There's further contact there, I think. That was one of the Yassi Ferraris. I think that was Samir that was sent off a little bit in the background, or was it Valentine? I can't quite see. Everything is very much jumbled up. The number 12 car is down the order, and all of my overlay, unfortunately, is sorting itself out. Noah Reeder, that was the K. Kramer Racing esports car that ended up being sent off at the pointy end of the field, though. It is Hutchinson that continues to lead ahead of Omashima, Walsingham, Carreras. Boothby is up into P5. What an absolute madman. How has he done that? I mean, we'll see. We'll wait for the overlay to update and make sure that is a confirmed position. But no, I can see that Veloce Esports Ferrari. What a fantastic start from him. Started in P12. He's gained 7 positions on the first lap. And possibly with someone getting some penalties in the near future, we'll have to wait and see. He could very much be challenging for a podium, and I imagine he will be extremely ecstatic if he was able to do that. But big story in the opening part of this race. Nicholas Hubert Mr. Consistency dropping down the order as everything. Oh, as if that's a spinner further down. Unfortunately, I can't see the number for who it is, but we do have some action side by side in towards turn 1. Timo Karppinen down the inside of Matti de Campo then as they head down in towards turn 2 now. And I think as Niklas Huber not wasting any time at all, he wants a position back. He wants to score some points. We do have drop scores, remember, in this championship, so it might not be the be all and end all for the number 3 car, but you can see the damage on the front of that one there. It was in fact Karppinen and actually ended up self-righting that rather stricken Mercedes. At one point, Schneckenberger, kick of oversteer on the exit of turn 5 there, just about managing to gather all that one up. Yellow flags out again. Who is that all for? And I don't have the same level of information that I usually do, and I'm trying to pick up who it is. I think it was Goppert who was, and we'll try going for a replay. This is going to be a laugh. So side by side, I think that's Inestrosa that he's battling with there. Side by side between the Porsche, the Audi, 3 wide, made by one of the other Porsches, and there's the contact, second piece of contact, and Inestrosa. Innocent party there. I think that's one of the, might have been Manuel Fuchs who was sent off into the gravel as well. The helicopter camera really has no idea where to be looking in all of this. But you can see the aftermath of all of that, and very disappointing stuff for those drivers further down the order then. But at the pointer end of the grid, Hutchinson then still leads ahead of Omashima Walsingham, with Korekas starting to apply some pressure on to the likes of the Ferrari ahead, and also being very much joined for company by his Veloce Esports teammate of George Boothby. To get a lovely overhead shot as they fly in towards turn... that is turn 5, I think they're making their way through. Now, still getting familiar with aspects of this circuit. I think so are the drivers, and it does often take a few times to visit a circuit where you kind of start to learn the dynamics of how you need to do things in the opening few laps. So we'll see with Korekas here whether he's able to maintain pace over his Veloce teammate, but right now George Boothby very much looking like the driver that is in hot pursuit. We don't quite have the same types of cameras that we normally would, but we do have this one as a little bit of an onboard from the 296 as the number 4 car, last week's race winner, with that phenomenal start. Now is a very wobbly moment for the Lithuanian just in front of him, and hot pursuit towards through turn 13, looks down the inside for 14, can't do anything on this occasion. How does the straight line speed fare though between the Ferrari and the Porsche? Porsche no slouch anymore, in actual fact driving away from the number 4 car as they head down towards the first turn then. So we'll have to see if Boothby can open up an opportunity elsewhere in the lap. Someone else that is coming under some pressure. Timo Karppinen's Huben carrying great momentum through the first turn now, trying to dive it down in towards turn 2 on the inside. Tiny bit of door banging between those two drivers, and there's further contact between those, and the Griphax engineering car looks towards the left hand side and tries to open up the exit, but there's a Unicorns Love Mercedes in the way, and Huben on his continued recovery makes his way in towards P9 as he tries to desperately get some points back and consolidate what right now has gone from being again another opportunity to extend and cement that championship lead, and now he is fully into recovery mode, but very much trying to move his way up the order, although he's got to be careful not to give the Finnish driver behind too much in the way of opportunities, as the two Veloce drivers again very close to one another through the early parts of the circuit. You see Leon Berndt coming under pressure as well from Marco Bischoff, and there's a good mix of cars in this top group. We've got the Lamborghinis, the Ferraris. We of course had a Mercedes up here on pace in the qualifying session. I'm sure that Niklas Huber would very much still be involved in this fight. There haven't been for that unfortunate contact. We'll have to wait and see what happens in terms of the stewards' decision. Of course, we have a fantastic set of live stewards for these Pro Series races now, as Boothby can't do anything there. You can see absolutely pushing it to the very edge of track limits through both turn 1 and 2. This is what we expect from the Pro Series drivers. They will extract absolutely everything they can as a fight building up between Naldi, Cyprus, and Mahoney down in towards turn 1. It's Aston, Ferrari, Lamborghini. I remember seeing the Aston Martin in the starting grid. Oh, that was almost an attack launched by Cyprus in that number 31 car, but they stay as they were for the time being. An opportunity will have to be found elsewhere. Gaps at the front of the field have somewhat stabilised, with Hutchinson going about 1/10 of a second faster than Omashima last time around. So the Japanese driver, who has been an absolute master of this circuit in the LFM daily races, not quite able to execute the sort of pace right now that he would have been wanting to extract and get himself ahead of the hard-charging Canadian. But we know Hutchinson is absolutely formidable when he is in the groove. And right now, almost managing to its extended advantage up to a second. That damage on the Mercedes may be starting to prove pivotal in terms of tyre wear, because here comes Carpenter looking down the inside, nose chopped across the front, and maybe even opens up an opportunity for Leon Byrne to try to apply the pressure in just a moment. But Huben having to fight tooth and nail at the moment to hold on to this P9 spot. Not a position that he would have expected to be in. That's all kicking off. Further down the order, that is Malik Mamad, and I think battling with Sabarov in the number 28 car. Number 33 is the one that's going to come out on top as they get towards turn 1. They were all the way over to the left-hand side of the circuit at one point, but in the end, the number 33 Porsche does end up coming out on top in that fight as Cyprus continues to apply actually goes more into defensive mode. You see Noah Reader getting involved in this scrap as well. Matteo Naldi has been able to close up the gap to the likes of Gregor Force. That was the Porsche that we saw earlier on heading into the gravel while taking evasive action when Inestroza was very unfortunately sent around. Then we do actually still have... Oh dear! That was a rather unfortunate time to cut to that camera, as Inestroza, I think, for the first time in his championship, manages to avoid getting involved in an instance that was taking place there. And you see the number 21 car, Inestroza, a very clean driver, but has just so often found himself in tricky positions and being caught up in fights he does not want to be involved in, and today was a perfect example of that. But I think on this occasion where we had Hildebrandt and Goppel battling side by side, you can see aggressive down the inside. I don't know if Inestroza got free of that entirely in terms of contact. I think he might have just about managed it. It was difficult to tell. And you see a little bit of a drift on the exit as the Audi gets themselves going. Once more, that was a bit of late braking, a bit too much late braking from Jonathan Clifford in the number 27 car, and that is going to allow Gorka Barron, I think, to make his way by. We've also got battles further up ahead between some of these other cars. I'm desperately trying to see which ones that is, because I don't have the usual graphics. As Daniel Valla defending now from both Alessio Mellis and Manuel Fuchs, Porsche, and the Ferrari getting stuck in side by side, tussling through the opening couple of corners, but staying in the same positions they were in just a moment ago. And oh, there's been contact there between one of the BMWs. That's Jan Drexler, and I think that was Jacob Shaber in the number 29 car. So what happened there between those two drivers? We will optimistically actually make use of the replay graphic. There we go. It almost looks like we've got a fully functioning stream for this evening. So Shaber then almost made contact with the BMW just up ahead of him there. Jan Drexler sensing an opportunity. Now he doesn't send one down the inside, completely clatters into the back. The 34 car did very well. That was Nesmian to keep it going, but in the end, Jacob Shaber, nothing that he could do, and unfortunately gets sent around in the process, as it's got very close at the top of the field once more between Carreras and George Boothby. George Boothby stuck in that slipstream and bringing along Leon Byrne and Marco Bischoff to the party as well, but not quite able to get them involved to a point for an overtake and a scrap. In towards the door, say that, he launches an attack down the inside. He did look like he was close enough. Granted, Carreras, how hard will he fight this one? Because he's got a championship to think about, but this is his teammate. George Boothby trying to go around the outside out of the 296. Fantastic stuff between the two Veloce drivers, Leon Burns and Marco Bischoff, watching with great interest as they're still side by side. And down the inside, George Boothby goes in towards turn 6. He's got the move done by the looks of it, but Carreras fighting back as it's Ferrari Porsche, Ferrari Porsche in this scrap. George Boothby trying to defend the position now, down through turn 7, in towards turn 8. Marco Bischoff looking down the inside, Leon Burt now, as the Porsche now tries to make a move on the Ferrari, two-time Pro Series champion. Little bit of door banging on the run up in towards turn 9, but Leon Burt's having none of it. Down the inside, big lock-up on the rears, in towards turn 11 then, and he snatches that position back. Incredible racing between these drivers inside the top 10, but Boothby then gets up into P4. Carreras has settled for P5, and Leon Burns says, not yet, sunshine, and takes back P6, just like that. What an incredible fight between these drivers in this race. And we are barely 15 minutes into the action. So whilst we have had quite the chaotic build-up in this race, from a technical standpoint, we've got the same good old action that we love from the Case King Pro Series. Valentin Barrier, 13th place, and is holding on to that position ahead of Pogorelov, who has got a little bit of company from Thomas Morant in the number 14 car, who's closing very quickly in the slipstream. Porsche looking very feisty down towards turn 1 with a little bit of a wide line in towards the first turn then, and I won't believe he'll be able to carry that momentum down towards turn 2. George Boothby carrying from a little bit far back, but I don't think Morant is going to be able to do anything quite on this occasion, as that is Nespian getting it all wrong, I think, on the exit of turn 1. Didn't quite see exactly what happened for him, but it has meant that the Porsche of Fabio Steyr, I do believe it is Fabio Steyr, with Jan Drexler, who of course already has a little bit of a busy time so far in this race, and they're bringing along Gorka Baron to the party as well, who almost dropped out of it immediately, and Jonathan Clifford trying to sneak one up the inside as they head in towards turn 6. A big kick of oversteer for the number 35 car, just about manages to keep it all under control. But that certainly was a rather scary moment for the German driver in that number 35 MDK Motorsports car. But still, busy times then for Nespian, maybe carrying a little bit of damage on board the M4. Of course, when he was rear-ended by the rather cannoned Jacob Schaber just a couple of laps ago by the BMW. Fights behind, and whether or not it was from the damage or if the tyres are just being cooked alive, he has got no rear grip as he heads in towards turn 12. He's given a great opportunity to Fabio Steyr. Will try to head for as best as I can. That's not what I wanted. Other one. No. I do apologise, everybody. That's still not what I wanted. There we go. From Jan Drexler in the number 16 car. One would think I wasn't familiar with this broadcasting tool. Down in towards turn 1, the M4 goes, trying to pursue the number 17 Porsche ahead, but in the end, they all maintain position. We see the Porsche of Baron lurking menacingly in that rear view mirror and on that little digital display on board the dash of this M4. I don't think all cars have that, but it is becoming more and more common on the modern ones, particularly those that are involved in some of the very long endurance races. That does become quite often a lifesaver in multi-class racing, so that you can keep an eye out for the likes of prototypes being in hot pursuit of you and managing to keep yourself out of the chaos. Further up in towards the top 10, a little bit of scrap going on between Schnegenberger, Samir Fock, and Mattia De Campo, the two Ferraris trying to close in on the Mercedes. Nicholas Huben has managed to kind of maintain his position in P9, still under a little bit of pressure from Timu Carpenter, but has managed to consolidate that one fairly nicely, as Leon Burnt coming under increasing pressure once more from Marco Bischoff. Down in towards turn 1 they go, but the number 15 car able to hold on this time around, as George Boothby just about ekes out a little bit of an advantage over his teammate. Looking at the lap times, very close between all of our top 5. In actual fact, Marco Bischoff last lap around, fastest by far of anybody, 30.7, 2/10 clear of anyone else. Next fast driver was your race leader in the number 6 Lamborghini, Jade Hutchinson, who has opened up a pretty decent gap now. I say decent, you still very much see that Burst Esports Lamborghini of Omashima is lurking in the mirrors, and Aidan Walsingham not far behind either, but 0.8 of a second when you've got such small margins. Bear in mind, he dipped into the 29s by 0.003 of a second in qualifying, and his pole position margin was only a few hundredths. So when you have a gap of 0.8 of a second, of course you want it to be more. When you're leading a race and when you're battling amongst other cars, you want everyone else to be as far behind you as possible. Makes a much more comfortable experience inside the cockpit. But if you've got a gap like this in a level of competition like the Case King Pro Series, that is a decent margin. If you can keep that going throughout the rest of the race, you can find yourself in a very strong position by the end of it. But Omashima is still very much up under pressure, was actually a smidge faster than the Canadian ahead of him last time around. So I have to see how that fight develops as Valencia Barrier has lost the position to Sammy Fox. So I think, no, in actual fact, let me try to get my bearings with this again. Maybe we just closed up the gap, actually, because we did have the two Ferraris that were closing in on this man. That is Schneckenberger in the Mercedes at the tail end of the top 10. But one way or another, Valencia Barrier has made his way into his fight. Yellow flag for the number 39 car, I think that is. No, there is a Lamborghini. The number 30, that is Dennis Shops, that's gone around at turn 1. We'll have a look and see what's happened to the Lamborghini driver. He's not really in too much of a close fight with anybody. There was side-by-side between Nesbian and Stayer, I think that is, although it's the BMW that ends up coming out on top in this one. So it's a self-inflicted error for number 30. It is the rear grip just giving out from underneath Dennis there, the German driver, and it does manage to get going again. Patient on the rejoin. Good discipline there from the Lamborghini, but unfortunate stuff from him. And does see him drop down the order a little bit, and also a bit further away from the tail end of the pack than he would have liked. Got very close. Oh, a bit more close than I was anticipating when I went to that camera. Jan Drexler sent around by Fabio Stayer, so he's gone from being one of the cars that unfortunately did make contact with Jacob Shaber earlier on, and now finds himself being the one that's cannoned off the circuit by Fabio. We'll try to see if we can get a slightly better angle of this one as they head up towards turn 12, and I think we're not going to get a very good angle of that at all, but you can see that there's side-by-side on the entry, and that's going to be one definitely going to the stewards there. One will say that he turned in on me, and the other will say that he should have left more space and backed out. So we'll have to see how the stewards play out with that one. In actual fact, that reminds me, I haven't even fired up the steward sheet. It's been such chaos in the background of the commentary box here as there's a three-way fight now between Korekas, Leon Burnt and Marco Bischoff, as George Boothby's really been able to run away from this group and is gaining 0.4 of a lap. 0.4 of a second per lap over Aidan Walsingham, but I tell you what, that's a fantastic run from Leon Burnt, and he might even get one down the inside, heading towards turn 14. Marco Bischoff going for the better exit, trying to set one up, and I think we're going to have three wide, because Marco Bischoff in hot pursuit as we try to once more go on board. Here we go, down towards the inside line there. We'll switch back to the external cameras, because it is three wide. Correct is on the left, Leon Burnt in the middle, Bischoff on the inside. Leon Burnt doesn't want anything to do with it, backs out of it, but does he go for the switchback? I think he's going to. Marco Bischoff, he's had the move done once before. Pit window's now open, but Leon Burnt sending one up the inside down at turn 2. He does not want to lose his position, and Marco Bischoff, I think, is still not going to be in P8. Oh, that was very hard racing between those two. Korekas breathes a sigh of relief for a moment and is able to extend a few car lengths, but Leon Burnt goes from being the attacker to actually being a very conscious and self-aware driver to try not to result in an awful crash at turn 1. But he's a smart cookie in that number 15 with a brilliant switchback to once again retain that position over the two-time Case King Pro Series champion, a long-term number 1 driver on the LFM platform that is Marco Bischoff. That is a talented man in that Kane Kramer Racing Esports Porsche, and Leon Burnt once again showing that he is here to fight, and he wants to get the position over Korekas, but he certainly is not going to be giving up the P6 spot that he is in anytime soon. So, pit window has opened. Some drivers we might see going for this could be the likes of Nicholas Huben, because in his position right now, he is being put under pressure from Teemu Karppinen. He, of course, has some damage on board this car, and those drivers ahead of him of Korekas, Leon Burns, and Marco Bischoff all battling very heavily, and they will be losing time. So decide not to go for it on this lap. Understandable, if you pit too early, you can put yourself in a very compromised and difficult position for later on in the race. So he doesn't want to risk it too soon, but I imagine that he could well be one of the drivers that pits early, especially because he is really being given a hassle now from Teemu Karppinen. Swapping position a little bit further down the order. I think Nico Pennon may have got a move done last time around, as Saberov versus Alessio Mellis towards turn 1, the 296, trying to apply the pressure down in towards that turn, then can't get it done. But turn 2, look for an opportunity, it's not given, and he'll have to stay in P19 for the time being. We also got some scraps between the likes of Jorg Domen and Angelina Strozer, which has been heating up. Angelina Strozer, who has had a bit of a torrid time today, trying to make his way back through the order. Definitely has the pace advantage, albeit carrying a bit of damage on board that Porsche 992. But we know that he is a very fast driver, and he has been gaining in the realms of 3.5 to 4 tenths of a second per lap, and I think Jorg might have a little bit of concern. He does go a little bit defensive, much more defensive actually than I thought he would do. In Strozer going for nothing but the exit, but he didn't quite get the drive out of that corner, maybe just a little bit unsure how the 37 was going to play that one, but I'm sure we'll be on his gearbox in no time, and I think could, in actual fact, if he gets a good run, might be a bit too far away. He would need a really good exit as Samir Fogg comes into the pit head. And I'll tell you what, whilst Strozer may not have had the best exit, Domen got it all wrong, but then Strozer got himself clobbered up over the curbs, couldn't get it turned, and in the end wasn't able to carry the momentum, I think, in the way he was hoping for, but that looked a little bit more promising for the Porsche, who we will go on board with, and he's got a mighty run out of turn 14, then down towards the inside as they cross the start-finish line. Towards turn 1 they go, and I think it's going to be easy pickings for the number 13 car. Yellow flag on the exit, but that's the number 24. Strozer does get the move done. I think that is Nesmian that has gone off there. We'll try to see what happens. Still side-by-side action through turn 2, and the Ferrari not giving this one up without a fight, but in the end I think Strozer is going to get that one done. We'll try to see what happened there with Nesmian. As why can't I click on him? There we go. Oh dear! Has just completely pulled over to the left-hand side of the circuit, and that looks like it could have been a bit of a technical issue. If I was to hazard a guess, it doesn't seem to have got going again by the looks of it. That is a big disappointment. Continuing to fall down the order, so far from what Nesbitt would have wanted there. You can see, still stranded on the exits, hasn't given up, or maybe trying to identify and fix whatever those issues might be. But unfortunate stuff there, as that's getting very busy with some of our top pack, as that is Marco Bischoff, who's made his way past Grancis Correca. So when did that happen? Did that happen on the way towards turn 1? I think it has, and he's come from an awful long way back, so Correca surely has made some sort of form of mistake. You see George Boothby's been able to run away from him, or is it negotiating this traffic on the exit of the pit lane? Oh, that's going to get very scary, and a big sideways moment for the Lithuanian. He barely manages to gather that one in time. Bischoff waiting for an opportunity, and then he comes on through and it gets up into P5 for the time being. So fantastic stuff between those two drivers, but Correca's not what he would have wanted. And I'll tell you what, one man is going to be increasingly pleased about that, although he probably hasn't got much time to think about it, is Nicholas Huben, who has got a lot of his mirrors filled up right now with that Lamborghini in the number 5 car, and now finds his championship rival only one position ahead of him. And after that moment on the very first lap, you can imagine that Nicholas Huben will be very relieved to see how this one has played out. I tell you what, Korekas was really struggling for pace, and all three of these drivers of Korekas, Huben and Karppinen are going to come into the pits. I could have sworn Karppinen looked like he was heading into the pits then, but he seems to have stayed out. So only Korekas, Huben are going to be pitting for now then, and Karppinen gets a bit of fresh air for the first time in a while. Let's have a little bit of a look at Nico Pennon, who I think has a little bit of a livery on as well in this number 20 car. Almost a little bit Brabham inspired with that. You see, it's a little bit of a hint of dark green in there, the gold pinstripes through that as well. So very nice for the number 20 car. Has got the company of Daniel Vallo. Sent one down the inside at turn 2. And excuse me, no, who was that actually that he was battling with? I can't actually work out which Porsche it is, because Daniel Vallo, that's the Ferrari that sits behind him. So who is in that Porsche? That is the number 29 car, by the looks of it. If I can see on my overlay correctly, I've got very small font sizes, unfortunately, in all this, because of the way I have everything arranged. That is Jacob Schaber, who maybe was just trying to... You know, he's on, by the looks of it, maybe on fresh tyres. Obviously, he was caught up in an instance earlier on. Wanted to crack on with things and almost end up making contact there with Nico Pennon, but thankfully didn't end up doing anything. With all of that, I got very concerned for a moment there as the timing boards at the top of the standard made it look like there was a hideous moment for Hutchinson, but it does seem to all be okay. Walsingham and Bischoff now come into the pits as well, so we'll have to wait and see whereabouts does Bischoff come out relative to Korekas. We would have to assume he'll come out ahead. The undercut, I think, might be fairly powerful around here, but Korekas has been somewhat struggling for pace. Nico Pennon gets out of that scrap with Daniel Vallo and decides to come into the pits himself then. Scrap still continuing elsewhere in the field. Well, a little bit heating up with the likes of Thomas Morant and Daniel Vallo, if he can close that gap down up to about a second at the moment. Meanwhile, busy stuff between Matteo Noldi and Jonathan, excuse me, no, he's a bit further up the order. That's a BMW that's being sent off into the Shadow Realm on the exit of that one then. And the Aston Martin managing to just about keep that, that looks like the Yeet Esports BMW, excuse me, Mercedes, so used to that being a BMW for that manufacturer and team combo, that Matteo Noldi has managed seemingly to keep that car behind. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the same broadcasting tools I usually do, so there is significantly more sort of jumpiness in this broadcast. I do appreciate all of those that have joined in, because it has not been the easiest one to bring to you, so I appreciate all of the support for this evening. Hutchinson has come into the pits now and wants to get that tyre advantage over Omashima, as we've got the likes of Karppinen coming into the pit, so is De Campo, Valentin Barrier, as well as they all make their pit stops. Interestingly, Marco Bischoff, whilst he has retained the position over Grantas Korekas, and see Nicholas Huben in that fight as well, Leon Berndt has come out in front of the bunch of them. So Marco Bischoff, if he wants to once again overtake that Ferrari, you can see he's got a decent amount of gap that he needs to close up first, and Leon Berndt has shown that he has got some fantastic racecraft on board that Ferrari, so do not think for a second that he is going to be giving that position up easily. And right now he is travelling very, very quickly and is likely going to be making it very difficult for the German driver to try to reclaim that position. Hutchinson comes out into some very nice clean air on the exit of turn 1. Teemu Karppinen in the pits for a very, very long time. See whenabouts he is going to get going again. He's just dropped off the jacks. You can see a bit of a scrap there, I think, between Valentin and De Campo on the exit, with the Ferrari just about managing to hold onto that one. You see Karppinen, when they came in to the pits, I believe was ahead of those two drivers, and he's dropped behind. So whether or not that was a penalty, he had a bad pit stop, or if he was repairing the damage that he got at the beginning of the race, where he did end up, no fault of his own, being the car that managed to actually rectify the Unicorns of Love Mercedes from going into a complete spin, but unfortunately did end up giving him some damage on board the front of that car. Again, I have just remembered that I still haven't had a look at the stewarding sheet, so I'll have a bit of a look and see what the penalty situations are for this race, because it has certainly been a busy one in the comms box, there's no doubt about that, and I'm sure it's been just as busy as well for some of these some of the stewards that we have working very, very hard in the background. George Boothby goes into the lead of the race as Hutchinson making his way towards turn 1. You can see Omoshima is very close between the pair of them, closer than I think Hutchinson was expecting, but a little bit of a wide line on the exit there from the Japanese driver. And of course those tyres will take a moment or two to heat up, that he will end up dropping a little bit away. But you can see Aidan Walsingham very much still involved in this fight as well, and could really be applying the pressure to these top two Lamborghinis. Some questions about the number 14 car of Thomas Morant. Some supports shown for the Dakota Esports driver in the server earlier on, and we'll get a bit of a better representation of how things lie shortly once the pit stops end. But a fairly decent race so far for Thomas Morant. I think we've got a few more drivers to come into the pits. Morant being one of them, but also the likes of Valor, Barron, Fuchs, Ida, Clifford, Naldi, Doman, all inside that top 10 at the moment, need to come into pits. Same goes for the likes of Mamad. So we'll have to see how they sort of re-jostle the order once they complete their pit stops for this race. Of course, one compulsory pit stop, and crucially in the pit window as well. That is the caveat there. And I'll tell you what, Korekas has got some serious company now from Nicholas Huben, who still looks like he may be carrying the damage on board the front of that Mercedes. But Korekas, after having looked like he was going to be the Porsche that was putting pressure on those at the front of the field, crucially and rather spectacularly when you consider how things were at the end of lap 1. Nicholas Huber now trying to see if he can get ahead of his championship rival. Isn't able to do anything in towards turn 1. But right now, Huben in that Mercedes will go on board with the Unicorns of Love driver, as we get a nice view from this Mercedes and that V8 roaring under the bonnet of that car. And Porsche very good in this middle section of the lap of the Mercedes with its 1.9 overhaul, completely different package from what it used to be, and a very, very competitive car now amongst this grid. So a lot of no further actions from the stewards, but we do have some rather severe penalties, and some drivers that I imagine aren't going to be the happiest with these. So we have a drive-through penalty. We've got more than one in the server as well. Drive-through penalty for the number 36 car. That was Tony Mahoney for causing a collision. So pretty hefty one of that. I think that could have been, we did see out of the corner of our eye on the very first lap, a massive dive towards turn 7. Actually turn 4. On the opening lap, and I do believe that may be what that is for. That was a fantastic exit for the Unicorns of Love car. See, gaining in the slipstream. Mercedes very good in a straight line. Porsche better than it used to be, but I'm not sure he's got anything. And actual facts, number 3 car lets the Veloce Porsche of Grantis Korekas fight another day and backs out of the throttle on this occasion as they head now in towards turn 2. We'll stay on board as we look further through the penalties. Drive-through penalty also for the number 33 car. That was Malik Mamad in the 30th spot at the moment, so not good for him. 5-second penalty for the number 31 car. That goes to Dominic Cyprus, who I think we saw involved in a few different battles. Oh, the penalties continue. Another 5-second penalty for number 33 of Malik Mamad for causing a collision. 5-second for the 21 car. That was Valentin Goppelt. And then a 10-second penalty for the number 19. That was Matteo Naldi, who currently is in the pits. And I don't know if that's retired to the pits or if that is just to serve a rather prolonged stop. The number 16, 15-second penalty for that car. That was Jan Drexler. I think that was for the cannon incident down in towards turn number 4. Let's see if Nicholas Huben not quite able to make a move this time around towards the final turn, as the last few of our drivers coming into the pits now. An order will re-establish, and once it does, we can give a bit more of a better update on the likes of some of our positions at this point in the race, gaining in the slipstream, but just can't quite get alongside. And Huben being very patient with this one. Smart driving from the German driver and your championship leader, who, again, doesn't look like he'll be able to win a race at this point in the season, but consistency has been key, and he is looking very much like he wants to snatch a position away from his championship rival. What a good race and recovery it would be from the Unicorns of Love Mercedes if he is able to do that. Number 5 car, 10-second time penalty, I think, actually is still under review for causing a collision. So we'll see what happens with that. We've got then 2 more penalties with a lot of no further actions. 15-second penalty for the number 17 car. That goes to Fabio Steyer. And then last, the number 31 car, Cyprus again, another 15-second time penalty. So a lot of penalties in this race as drivers familiarise themselves with the 1.9.3 update and also with this circuit. Of course, drivers haven't had a great deal of time to really get used to doing high-level competitive racing on this track. And whilst they may have dabbled from time to time in hot laps, and they would have got a decent feel of it in the daily racing here at LFM as well, but this group of drivers are some of the tippy top of the platform, both on ACC and on LFM itself. And it's a whole different kettle of fish when you are battling these sorts of drivers in this championship with such high stakes going for grabs. So Kurekis holds on to that position for now. We'll check in with that fight in a moment, because we've got Timo Karppinen, who, recovering through the order, goes down the inside of Fabio Steyer there in towards the final turn, and will very much be in hot pursuit of Gorka Baron in the coming laps, I am sure. Travelling very quickly in that Lamborghini. Set a 30.7 on the previous lap. And I'll tell you what, someone else that is gaining a lot of time, George Boothby, is reeling in Aidan Walsingham at a pretty decent rate of knots. Did lose, I think, a little bit of time with some traffic on the last lap, as you can see, very busy. And Leon Burns actually in hot pursuit as well, as he tries to close in on the Ferrari up ahead. But Walsingham, who is 3rd in the championship standings, could very much be coming under pressure from the man that he scrapped so intensely with last week at Watkins Glen. And George Boothby, who, bearing in mind, started P12, a very uncharacteristic starting position for one of the winningest drivers in the Case King Pro Series. But managed to gain 7 positions on the first lap. What an onboard I imagine that would have been from the number 4 car, who finds himself in P4, but definitely will be wanting a little bit more than that. Sammy Fock has got some company of Mattia De Campo at the tail end of the top 10 as they continue to scrap, as Manuel Fuchs and Daniel Valle getting very close to one another there on the exit of the final corner. And now down towards turn 1. What's it going to be between the Porsche and the Ferrari? The Porsche's got the pace down that start-finish straight. I've only seen the Lamborghini and the Mercedes really be able to outpace it. The Ferrari, in certain setups, is an absolute rocket ship in straight-line performance. But on this occasion at Valencia, just doesn't quite seem to have the pace that I'm sure Daniel Valle right now would desperately be hoping for, and to be able to execute a move down towards the first turn on this fantastic 14-turn circuit that has given us such incredible action. We've got some more that is going to kick off very shortly between Doman and Dennis Shops as well, between the 296 and the Lamborghini, battling for the 25th position in this race. Just checking in, though, on our race leader, Jade Hutchinson, who's been driving very quickly, although did lose a couple of tenths on the last lap, is currently sitting in front of Kazuki Omishima, where these two have, in this second phase of the race, really been a whole league of their own. I'll tell you what though, Caracas has to go defensive this time around in towards turn 2. Nicholas Huben trying to go around the outside now. This is the first attack that we've seen from this Unicorns of Love Mercedes. Looks to the outside, can't make that one stick. Oh, and I thought that Caracas was going to go more defensive than that, but he might be a young driver behind that wheel, but he's got a lot of experience. He's the #1 man on the LFM platform, and he is an absolute fighter when it comes to positions, and he is not going to fall for any tricks that the German is going to launch at him. And also, of course, so much on the line between these two, with the championship fight going on. To round off the request, we had a little bit ago. The number 14 car currently sitting in P13 and in a little bit of a tussle with Pogorelov in the number 23 Ferrari just up in front. So we'll see if that develops into a scrap for us to dig our teeth into. But Caracas really having to fight, and he's got a lot of traffic in front of him, and it was traffic that caused him to lose a position to Marco Bischoff earlier on, and now could very much find himself in almost identical circumstances, because there you go, Bischoff, he's cleared all of these cars, but there is 3 cars in the way there. They'll be showing the blue flags, but in GT racing, all they have to do is not defend when a lapping car is trying to make a move. Other than that, they don't have to slow down, they don't have to lift, and right now they are heavily engrossed in a fight of their own. There's a yellow flag somewhere on the circuit. Oh, that's getting tricky as Nespian was launching an attack. He has managed to get going again by the looks of it, which is fantastic news. Nespian launching an attack, in actual fact, unlapping himself. That was the 34 car of Nespian getting out of the way and allowing both Caracas and the Unicorns of Love Mercedes of Huben through, and not interfering with this scrap too much. Someone, though, that is having a very busy time, as that looks to maybe be in a Strozer in the background, as Carpenter's just made up the move over Alessio Melis, and he's wide in towards turn 1 there. The Ferrari under pressure now from Baron down the inside. The number 35 goes, and a fantastic way to snatch that position. He uses all of that traction and torque from the flat 6 to drive his way out of the corner and move his way up into what will be 20th position, as Carpenter finds his way inside the top 20 and immediately applying the pressure on to Saburov, now in that number 28 Porsche, who's driven a fantastic race so far to get that car as far up the order as he has. I don't think he's been in the Pro Series that long. This may well be his debut race, but an amazing start from him to kick things underway in hopefully what will be a long Case King Pro Series career over the upcoming races and, of course, seasons for what this championship holds. We've been able to enjoy such incredible action over the last few seasons, and we are going to have much, much more, I have no doubt, on the way in the future. Wide moment for the Ferrari behind. You see Carpenter, great line there through turn 12, going to launch one down the inside, won't even use the straight line speed of the Lamborghini to make up the move, and I tell you what, he was cautious from the Porsche of Saburov, and now maybe gives a little bit of an opportunity to Gorka Baron, and we ride on board within the 35 car, looking down the inside. He can barely get alongside, but he is going to lift off by the time they get to the apex, and he will allow the number 35 car to recover that ground, and they will stay just as they were, other than Timo Carpenter make his way now up into P18 and trying to close down onto the likes of Noah Eder, who just caught the glimpse of the rear wing of passing through the shot. Caracas still under so much pressure from Nicholas Huben, and again, that part of the circuit really not working nicely for the Porsche whatsoever. Great stuff from the Mercedes, but the Porsche just in the way. You can see Huber desperately trying to carry that momentum on the exit. He's got a fantastic run, and he finally has an attack to go side by side towards turn 1. It's all been about turn 2 over recent laps, but there's the raw power on the Mercedes. But again, the Porsche is strong. Cut back on the cars, not quite, as one of the lapped cars, that is the 26, I think, watching in the background. Huber sent towards the outside, can't make anything stick there. Caracas still holds on And they continue to fight as they make their way down in towards turn 4. There's only 14 minutes or so left to go in this race. No further inquiries dealt with from the stewards. So we'll have to see, hopefully, we will have an incident-free race to the end. It has been quite the busy one from start to finish, both here in the comms box and also on track with our fantastic lineup of drivers. Matty DeCampo coming under pressure from Valentine Barrier, who's looking to get that Lamborghini in towards the top 10. If he can make something stick there, be a nice little bonus to walk away with. Not a massive difference in terms of championship points. For those that may be coming into this season and have seen the Pro Series before, we used to have a point system which was very much based on how the main daily racing servers worked, where you had a standard of field. Depending on the level of that field, governed the amount of points that you could score. And then the points gaps between cars was all about how many positions you ended up gaining, and also the likes of how cleanly you ended up doing some of those things, and then also in terms of then your overall net finishing position in that grid. Now for the Case King Pro Series, we have a much more conventional championship style approach to the results, where there are fixed points for each car position, and the winner takes 1,400 points away from each race, and then it gradually works down from there. So pretty small differences down here between the likes of P9 and 10, as Matty DeCampo has gone from being under pressure from Valentine Barrier to really now putting some pressure and really adding some sweat to the brow of Sammy Fock in that number 10 car, who may well end up in P10 in the coming laps, because DeCampo, the Italian driver for Team Shazoo, unfortunately don't seem to have their livery activated for today. Very much applying pressure now to try to see if he can work his way up the order. Koreka still continuing to fight as hard as he possibly can to hold on to that P7 spot, because whilst there may be relatively small differences in the points between some of these positions, it is ever crucial as something's kicked off at the front of the field, because there was a lot of time lost between Hutchinson and Omashima, and all of a sudden side-by-side action and door banging towards turn 1. Hutchinson almost losing the lead from the Japanese driver there. What on earth happened? Walsingham has also come into the pits, so I think that could be for a drive-through penalty for track limits, and what was turning into a stellar day for the Visceral Esports driver. He is going to be losing a lot of positions there. George Boothby from P12 on the grid finds his way up into the podium positions, and Hutchinson, after finding himself in a comfortable spot for a while, has suddenly got all sorts of pressure building up from Omashima behind. Lost 9/10 of a second on the last lap alone, and there's traffic for these drivers to deal with once more, heading in towards this tricky winding middle sector now. And Walsingham has emerged all the way down. He's outside of the top 10. Disaster for the Visceral Esports Ferrari. And after getting such a strong result and carrying that momentum forward into this race, he'll be gutted about that. But look at that, a little bit of a wide line from Hutchinson. Omashima just looking a little bit tidier through there. And when we went on board with Omashima in qualifying, you could see there was a sense of calm on board the car. They seemed to kind of really gracefully go from apex to apex. I imagine we'll see a bit more of an aggressive fashion over the coming laps, because he hasn't got much time left if he does want to make a move. Only 10 minutes left to go in what has been a very busy race, but for the time being, Hutchinson holding on to that position. And as you can see in that graphic, Walsingham about to tumble his way down the order. Of course, it's already happened, just the graphic is updating, but he is now down in P11, and Koreka's having to defend from Nicholas Huber once again, being wary of that Unicorns Love Mercedes lurking in the mirrors. But crucially, able to do everything that he needs to in order to just get a little bit of an outscore over his championship rival. But with drop scores on the way later on in the season, really is going to be about consistency, something that both of these drivers have displayed fantastic amounts of skill with. And even though they've both had a little bit of a topsy-turvy day, and much like the championship, they have managed to converge on one another, and there is barely anything to choose between them. De Campo still applying the pressure onto Samir Fock with Valentin Barrier lurking in the background, but not able to do anything. And Thomas Moran sending one up the inside of the number 23 Ferrari. Then drag race on the exit of turn 6. They'll make their way through the flat-out kink of turn 7 now. And I think that number 14 Porsche, although it's very late on the brakes for Alexander, but I don't think he's quite going to be able to fight back and hold the advantage. And Thomas Moran there was some support from in the chat. I'm sure that'll go down very well as he makes his way up into P12 in the closing stages of this race. Great little scrap and opportunistic driving there from the German driver. Saberov in the number 28 car coming under increasing pressure from the number 22 of Alessio Mellis in the Ferrari, but for the time being has been able to keep the Italian outfit at bay. You can see margins between our leaders. Would you believe it? George Boothby, there he is. He's only a few seconds behind our leading pair, and I find that absolutely astonishing. What he would have given to start a bit further up the order, but perhaps he was rather fortuitous in where he started, able to avoid all of the carnage that was ahead of him on the first lap. It must have been like the seas parted for that Veloce Esports Ferrari. So maybe all works out exactly as he would have liked. But a podium spot will be something he'll be delighted, I'm sure, to come away with today. Samir Fock and Mattia De Campo. Oh, such a big moment, Mattia De Campo! Completely losing out the brakes there. Very uncharacteristic error. There's a board lobbed across the circuit, stuck to the front of the number 11 car now. From one of the BMWs that I think was just rather terrified of what was going on up ahead. De Campo sends the board into oblivion there, into the gravel, and Samir Fock reclaiming the position. But a massive moment for the Italian car there. We'll try to go on board with De Campo. If I can get to the camera, the overlay's not letting me, and there it goes, just completely gives way under braking, and there was nothing that he could do. And poor Samir, who, much like in Astroza, has often on occasion been unfortunately one to suffer being caught out in incidents that were no fault of his own, and unfortunately today does seem to be another one of those instances. Meanwhile, at the front of the pack again, it's heating up. That looked like Industroza trying to make a move down the inside, and he does over Gregor Forst. As that is Jacob Shaber actually trying to very much immediately hop onto the battle as well. So Industroza continuing to try to reclaim as many positions as he can. I think more of a matter of pride at this point than really in terms of championship points, as Schneckenberger for a moment looks to get very close to the back of Samir Fock. Well, that seems to have changed around. In actual fact, I can't even highlight him. There seems to be some shenanigans going on there. Jacob Shaber launching an attack down the inside of turn 14. It's all kicking off now, and a little bit of door banging on the exit there. And this is not what Hutchinson wants to be seeing, because those two Lamborghinis, that's your leading pair. It's less than 6 minutes to go then in what has been a very action-packed race. Hutchinson still leads ahead of Omashima, Boothby in P3. Leon Berg, great drive from him as well in P4, Bischoff P5, Korekas P6, trying to fend off Nicholas Huben. But right now, in terms of your leaders, this is what potentially could be a very poignant point in the race. They've been pretty even on pace over the last few laps after that very sudden closing in between the two, and it's getting very tricky. Good stuff from the number 39 car to conveniently get out of the way. Not so much from Mishima, because he has to back out the throttle a little bit in order to not run into the Porsche there. So in actual fact, working out for Hutchinson on that occasion. What is Jacob Shaber going to do when they get to the end of turn 8 then? The Porsche holding on to position for now. He doesn't have to move out of the way, but I can tell you now, Hutchinson, if he had a horn, he would be beeping it into oblivion to try to get through. Shaber not making it quite as easy as the other Porsche did a few moments ago, but in the end, both Lamborghinis getting through safe and sound. And Omashima still in hot pursuit of the Canadian driver who makes a mistake. And I wonder if it was that sort of mistake earlier on. The pressure really building up in the closing stages of this race. Nobushima going to launch one down the inside. Opportunities running out, but he can't quite make one stick. The Canadian, he shuts the door, and after almost giving it up, he thought he did the hard bit of getting through the traffic. Immediately got a very poor exit out of turn 12, and Omashima was very nearly in that top spot, and I'm sure he'll be hunting, trying to find every possible chance that he can in these closing stages. He's glued to that yellow flag out for, I think that was the number 28. That was Saberov, who it was, that is just managing to recover now. Going to lose more positions, but I can't dare go back on the replay because it's all kicking off up and down the order with very important and pivotal scraps going on, as Huben has also made his way past Grantas Carecas. We're focusing on this lead battle. We've missed that. So in terms of the championship, Huben now is going to somehow, after being sent around on the first lap of this race, is going to extend his advantage over Grantas Carecas, which is a result that I really imagine that neither of those drivers would have seen coming. Much like George Boothby being in P3, who will be watching this scrap with a great deal of interest, hoping that maybe some shenanigans takes place between these two in the closing stages, and he can come flying on through for what would be a remarkable victory if it were to play out like that. But 3 minutes left on the clock. 2 laps left to go. Wide again for Hutchinson. Really seems to be struggling in that part of the circuit, maybe being a bit cautious of that inside curb, and in doing so sacrificing a little bit of lap time. So there'll be 2 laps left, including this next one when they go and cross the line. So not many opportunities left for Omashima to make something stick. Penman, Valor, and Fuchs involved in a scrap of their own, battling around the top 15 positions, and some other scraps as well further down the order. Jan Trexler trying to keep back Tony Mahoney in the number 36 Lamborghini. Excuse me, it was a Lamborghini, wasn't it? It was a Lamborghini, yes. But the top 2 are really the ones that we're interested in, because Hutchinson versus Omashima, a battle that really hadn't done too much during the vast majority of this race. And then I think just with a little mistake, like we saw, as George Boothby manages to get through some of that traffic as well in the background, and now has clean air, I would imagine, till the end of this race. Hutchinson, another clean lap from him, and as he makes his way through in towards that tricky middle sector, through turn 9, through in towards turn 10, and then 11, double right-hander. Omashima trying to give it everything right now in that number 25 car, but right now it seems that the Canadian unflappable. That's been the tricky part of the circuit again, very wide, but he's being very calculated here. He's almost lost it once. He's just treating it cautiously. He's managing the gap, and he's looking to try to bring this one home. He has taken, I think, one victory previously that was back in last season at Indianapolis, if I remember correctly. So there's been a little bit of time, whilst he has been contending for race wins, there has been a little bit since he actually managed to get one, and they've got the fight of Inostroza and Gorka Baron right in front of them through the early parts of the lap. And you've got to be really careful if you are coming up against these two, because they've had quite busy races themselves in this race, and you know, they are going to be fighting tooth and nail as well. It doesn't look like they can make anything stick for the time being. Marco Bischoff and Leon Bird scrapping again. Bischoff all the way around the outside. That's not going to work, surely. These two have come together time and time again, but Bischoff somehow keeping his foot in it, and Leon Bird, will he be able to hold on to it this time? He's going to have to go for the exit once more. It's all coming down to the very last lap of Bischoff. Might have just about done what he needed to do with just a few moments left to go in this race, and he does seemingly have got the position done. Hutchinson then, one more run through turn 12. He needs to keep it clean. Pressure building. That's the best run that he has had through that corner in a while. Omashima running out of corners, running out of time. And unless it's a bigger dive, he very loosely looks down the inside, but I don't think it's going to happen. And Jade Hutchinson, it got a bit scary at the end there, but the Canadian driver in the number 6 car is going to win here around 8 at Valencia for the first time that the Case King Pro Series heads to this circuit. Omashima finishes P2. George Boothby, remarkable drive, finishes P3. Amazing scrap between Bischoff and Leon Byrne on the final lap of the race, and a fantastic move sees Bischoff get up into P4. P5 then for Burnt. Huben somehow, after that disastrous lap 1, recovers to P6, and Grantas Correcas slamming it in the wall then. And a very, very frustrated young man in the cockpit of that car. Valentin Barrier manages to hold on to P8. Walsingham in P9. Disappointment there for him, I am sure, to get that drive-through penalty. And I think one of the only drivers to get a drive-through as well, so big disappointment. Samir does manage to hold on to a top 10 spots in the end. That's why I couldn't click on Schneckenberger. I think Schneckenberger ends up disconnecting. It's made my leaderboard go all weird and wonky. But Matty De Campo finished in P11. We've got Thomas Morant in P12. And we will close out looking at some of these final scraps before we then do a full race rundown to finish up this one, because it's been a mighty, mighty busy race. But it does look like as this final few groups of cars make their way towards line, Shops ahead of Cyprus, Sabarov ahead of Doman and Goppelt as well. And then Malik Mamet, who had quite a busy time and I think was under investigation quite a few times as well from the stewards, who also have given out a couple of last-minute penalties that we will see reviewed in the results in just a moment. But at the closing stages, we had a 10-second penalty for the number 22 car, so that belonged to Alessio Mellis. The number 31, that is a number that I think I've seen crop up already today. That is Dominic Cyprus, who got another 5-second penalty for causing a collision. Busy day for the stewards for that BMW, unfortunately. And another 5-second penalty at the end for the number 31 car, again of Dominic Cyprus. So a lot of penalties given out there, and perhaps, you know, unfortunately, you can sometimes have those tough days behind the wheel. And, you know, when you have those tough days, it is the case that you look to try to reflect, build upon what has happened, and then try to see what you can take forward in the future. But what a fantastic race we had this evening. For all of those that have stuck around in the chat at the end of this race, I am incredibly grateful to you all, because if you have been here since the beginning of the stream, you know that this has been far from a simple setup, and I've done my best to try to bring the action to you tonight, and I hope you have enjoyed this one, because it has been, as always, a fantastic race that we have had in the Pro Series. We'll go through an official run through the results in just a moment when they come through, and then we'll have a little bit of a roundup of what has been a very busy day in the world of ACC. Like I say, we came into this with tweaks and changes, which I think in the grand scheme of things didn't make a massive difference for a lot of these guys in the field, but it does open up future interesting opportunities, especially those that haven't committed to a car yet in the championship, that may be looking to get involved in the Pro Series for the very first time. And that McLaren, which, you know, in other series as of late, the old version has actually been regaining a bit of pace. McLaren Evo, all of a sudden, could be a massive game changer. It is way too early for us to know, but between that and the various other tweaks that we've had going on, it could be a seriously interesting time for the world of ACC, and it has been as of late over recent weeks for the game. Hutchinson then takes a fantastic victory ahead of Omashima. Boothby rounding out the podium with Bischoff, Burnt, Huben, Correcas, Barrier, Walsingham, and Fuck rounding out the top 10 with De Campo, Morant, Pogorolev, and another couple of drivers who I didn't quite catch. I think it was Penn and Navala towards the end of top 15. Carpenter in the end all the way down in P16. Disaster for him with Ida, Fuchs, Clifford, Shops towards the end of top 20 with Melis, Saborov, Doman, Goppelt, Steyer, Mahmoud, Baron, Inostrosa, Cyprus, And who's that behind? I can't quite see because the overlay has disappeared. And unfortunately then Cyprus also left the server in that as well. And then you can see some drivers had a bit of a difficult time at the tail end of the group with Force, Mahoney, Drexler, Vitter, Frey, Hildebrandt was down there as well. And then Nesmian and Naldi, I think, were a couple of our DNS, as well as Schneckenberger, who I don't think we quite ever saw what happened to the Mercedes driver. So a little bit of disappointment, I'm sure, for him. But what a fantastic drive. He got very busy at the front of the pack. And sort of looking at some of our biggest movers on the grid, Jonathan Clifford, 17 positions gained from him in the Lamborghini. I'll wait for it to cycle through back on the first page and see if there's anyone else that gained any more, but that's a pretty tough total, I think, to beat from the American driving. You see big losers there, the likes of Schneckenberger losing 23 positions and DNFing from this race. And we'll just let loop around one more time so we can see if our biggest mover on the grid was in fact the Lamborghini of Jonathan Clifford. And oh, it was close. Actual fact, there you go. No, Nico Pennanen in the end gained 21 positions to find himself into 14th place. What a fantastic effort there from him. And also the number 14 car of Thomas Morant that there was quite a bit of support for in the chat, finishing in P12. So some great stuff there from all of our drivers this evening. What a fantastic bit of action we have had, and it was always promising to be exciting stuff. It's the Case King Pro Series. It's what we're used to. It's what we love about this championship. But when you combine that with still some relatively new changes to ACC and also aspects of the physics, the BOP being tweaked, and then you had some fun, shall we call it, technical difficulties in the comms box, microphones falling over. Predominantly for this race, like I say, my vision was heavily obscured and I couldn't greatly see what was going on. Overlays didn't work and security software was a little bit overly proactive. But other than that, everything worked fantastically well and gave us all the glorious action that we have got used to enjoying on these Thursday evenings. So if you enjoyed all of that as much as I did to broadcast once we dived into the racing action, then do subscribe to the channel because there will be more upcoming stuff from the Pro Series over the upcoming weeks as we get into the closing stages of this championship. Only 4 rounds left to go. We'll be crowning a champion of Season 10. And if you fancy getting involved in some of this sort of racing yourself on the GT3 side of things, then do head over to localmotorsport.com. Get yourself signed up, get yourself a license, and you can work your way through the ranks, win some fantastic prizes along the way, and then start to dabble amongst some of the greatest drivers on the ACC platform that you have been seeing this evening. And if GT3 isn't quite your thing, there are still a variety of other championships on ACC available for you to enjoy, the likes of Endurance, GT4s, and some other series. And if GT isn't quite your kettle of fish, then go for R Factor 2, because that is also on the LFM platform now and has been for a while, been a roaring success across multi-class racing in the Sports Cars Championship, BTCC, Open Wheelers. There is something for everybody. So if you want to get involved in some of the fantastic daily racing and other championships that LFM has to offer, then do head over and get yourself signed up. It'd be wonderful to continue to grow this incredible community that has been growing each and every week. And we are closing in on 94,000 subscribers, and in not too distant future, I'm sure making our way to a fantastic milestone of 100,000. A little bit of way to go, but I have no doubt that we will be making our way there. So thank you everybody so much for watching tonight, and a big thank you for those who have been here from start to finish and keeping the support in the chat, because it was a bit of a tricky stream to get through, but I hope you enjoyed all of it as much as it was a pleasure to broadcast. So big thank you to you all, and until next time then, goodbye.